Picture this. Saturday morning, coffee barely warm in my hand, and the self-appointed queen of our little slice of suburban heaven is marching up my driveway like she's leading a SWAT raid. Karen Whitmore, HOA president for a decade, perfect blonde bob, pearl earrings swinging, and a smile so fake it could curdle milk. She stops 6 feet from my porch, jabs a manicured finger toward my backyard, and spits. "Mr. Caldwell, that pool cover is a direct violation of community standards. Remove it immediately, or I will have no choice but to involve the authorities." I blink. The pool's been closed since Labor Day, exactly like I've done every year since I bought the house. No rule says otherwise. But Karen's already got her phone out, voice sweet as poison. "Yes, officer, this is an urgent code enforcement issue at 1422 Maple Grove Lane. The homeowner is defying the HOA and creating a public nuisance." Public nuisance? Over a tarp. Welcome to Willow Creek Estates, where your grass can't be half an inch too long and your peace lasts exactly until Karen decides it doesn't. I stood there frozen, the crisp October air suddenly feeling like a freezer burn. Neighbors' curtains twitched. Mrs. Alvarez across the street pretended to water her roses while staring. I could feel the judgment rolling in like fog. Ryan Caldwell, newish guy, single dad, software nerd who keeps to himself, now labeled the neighborhood slob who doesn't care about property values. Karen hung up, crossed her arms, and gave me that pitying head tilt she probably practiced in the mirror. "It's for the children, Ryan. They need to see standards upheld. You understand." I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Instead, I just nodded once, the way you do when you realize you're dealing with a tornado in human form. Because here's the thing about Karen. She never raises her voice above a polite whisper, but every word is a velvet-wrapped knife. And I'd already learned the hard way that fighting back right then would only make me look like the angry man she wanted everyone to see. So I didn't fight. I smiled the small, tired smile of a guy who just wanted to finish his coffee. "I'll look into the bylaws again, Karen. Have a nice day." She narrowed her eyes, probably disappointed I didn't explode, then spun on her heel and strutted back to her pristine white SUV with the HOA president magnet gleaming like a crown. As the police cruiser rolled up 5 minutes later, Deputy Ramirez stepped out looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen greeted him with the same concerned neighbor act she'd used on me, voice dripping honey. "Thank you for coming so quickly, officer. We simply cannot allow one person to erode the standards we all worked so hard to maintain." I handed him the printed bylaws I'd already pulled up on my laptop. No date requirement for pool covers. Nothing. Deputy Ramirez scanned the pages, sighed, and gave Karen the politest "ma'am, this appears to be a civil matter" I'd ever heard. Her face didn't crack, but I saw the tiny twitch at the corner of her eye. That was the first time I realized Karen wasn't just obsessed with rules. She was terrified of anyone proving she didn't actually control them. That night I sat at my kitchen table with the blinds half drawn, replaying the body cam audio I'd secretly recorded on my phone the second she started dialing. Black humor of the situation hit me like a freight train. I was now the guy who had to record his own neighbor to protect himself from a pool tarp. I started a folder on my laptop, labeled it Karen's Greatest Hits, because if she wanted war over nothing, I was going to make sure the battlefield was documented in 12-point Times New Roman. The next week was pure psychological warfare wrapped in pastel cardigans. Karen's email blast went out at 7:03 a.m. Monday. "Dear Willow Creek family, it has come to my attention that certain homeowners are neglecting seasonal maintenance standards. Please be reminded that visible pool covers after September 30th create an eyesore and lower collective property values by an estimated 2.4%. Source: my cousin's realtor." No names, but everyone knew. My mailbox filled with sympathetic notes from people who didn't want to be next. "Sorry about the drama, Ryan. You know how she gets." I printed every email. I started knocking on doors at dusk, casual, friendly, just a guy asking if anyone else had ever been reminded about their holiday lights being up 3 days too long or their kids' basketball hoop being half an inch too tall. Turns out Karen had a highlight reel. Mrs. Alvarez showed me 3 years of fines for inappropriate flower colors. Old Mr. Henderson had been threatened with lien for parking his classic Mustang in his own driveway because chrome reflects sunlight into Mrs. Langley's bedroom window. Each story was more ridiculous than the last, and every single one ended the same way. But we don't want trouble, Ryan. She's been president forever. I smiled, nodded, and kept collecting. By week 3, I had a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. Dated complaints, email chains, even a voice memo from Karen herself telling the landscape committee that certain residents need to learn their place. Dark comedy gold. The woman who preached community harmony had been running a low-key reign of terror for 10 years, all while her own backyard had a broken birdbath she never fixed because it's vintage. I never argued back in public. When Karen cornered me at the mailbox with her little clipboard and that syrupy, just trying to help, dear, I'd say, appreciate the reminder, Karen. Working on it. Then I'd go home and add another page to the file. Patience isn't flashy, but it's a hell of a weapon when the enemy thinks you're weak. The escalation kicked into overdrive the day the certified letter arrived. $750 fine for ongoing aesthetic violation, plus a demand to appear before the board in 14 days to explain my pattern of noncompliance. Pattern. Over one covered pool. I stared at the letter until the words blurred, then laughed. The kind of laugh that starts in your stomach and ends somewhere between rage and pure delight. Because Karen had finally handed me the rope. I spent the next 10 days doing what she never expected. I became the most polite, rule-following ghost in Willow Creek history. Mowed the lawn at 8 a.m. Sharp. Trimmed hedges with a ruler. Even put up the exact shade of approved autumn wreath from the HOA color palette. All while quietly interviewing every homeowner who'd ever been on the receiving end of her clipboard. I had 23 signed statements by the time the meeting notice came. 23 people tired of pretending Karen's version of standards was anything but her personal vendetta. The night before the board meeting, I sat on my porch again. Same coffee mug, same covered pool gleaming under the security light like a middle finger wrapped in blue vinyl. I could see Karen's house across the cul-de-sac. Every light on, probably rehearsing her speech about protecting our investment. I raised my mug in a silent toast. See you tomorrow, Madam President. The community hall smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Folding chairs squeaked as 40 homeowners filed in, eyes darting between me and Karen like they were watching a slow-motion car crash. She sat at the head table in her signature cream blazer, gavel in hand, smile tight enough to crack glass. Good evening, neighbors. We have one item on the agenda tonight. Enforcement of seasonal standards at 1422 Maple Grove. She didn't even say my name. Just the address. Like I was a statistic. Whispers rippled. I waited until she finished her 5-minute monologue about the children and property values and the very soul of Willow Creek. Then stood up slow, binder under my arm like it weighed nothing. Actually, Karen, I'd like to add a second item. My voice didn't shake. Years of coding taught me how to stay calm while the system tries to crash. A discussion about selective enforcement and abuse of presidential authority. The room went dead quiet. Karen's smile froze mid-sentence. I walked to the front, opened the binder, and started laying pages out like I was dealing poker in hell. Exhibit A, 3 years of complaints against Mrs. Alvarez for purple petunias, fines totaling $1,200. While your own rose bushes have been code red for black spot since 2022. Exhibit B, Mr. Henderson's Mustang. Chrome violation notice sent the same week he voted against your proposed pool fence height increase. Exhibit C, I kept going. 23 exhibits. Every time I flipped a page, another neighbor sat up straighter. Karen tried the concerned laugh. Ryan, this is hardly the time for. Actually, I cut in, voice still pleasant. It's exactly the time. Because you called the police on me over a pool cover that isn't mentioned anywhere in the bylaws. You sent a certified fine letter threatening a lien. You told half the neighborhood I was eroding standards. And all while you've been weaponizing this board to settle personal scores for a decade. I held up the voice memo transcript. Her own words in black and white. Some people need to be reminded who runs things. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. Karen's pearls actually moved when she swallowed. This is character assassination. I have served this community. With an iron fist wrapped in a cashmere glove, I finished for her. A few people chuckled, the nervous kind that turns into courage. Mrs. Alvarez stood up first. She fined me $400 for a garden gnome. A gnome? Karen. You said it was tacky immigrant kitsch. Mr. Henderson followed. My Mustang's been in the same spot since 2018. Suddenly, it's a problem the week I questioned your budget. One by one they rose. The trickle became a flood. I watched Karen's face go from President Perfect to cornered rat in real time. Her hands trembled on the gavel. For the first time in 10 years, she had no script. I leaned on the table, voice low enough that only the front row could hear, but loud enough that the mic caught every word. You know the funniest part? I never fought you in public. I smiled. I nodded. I'll let you think I was just another scared homeowner. But every time you sent a nasty email, every time you sicked the deputy on me, I was taking notes. Because here's the thing about bullies and blazers. They always forget the quiet ones are the ones who keep receipts. The vote was brutal and beautiful. 7 board members, 6 hands up to remove Karen Whitmore as president effective immediately. The 7th, her best friend Linda, couldn't even look up from the table. Karen stood there clutching the gavel like it was the last life raft on the Titanic, mouth opening and closing in perfect little O's. This is a witch hunt. I'll sue. I'll save it, I said not unkindly. The bylaws you love so much say a 2/3 vote removes an officer for cause. We've got cause in triplicate. The room erupted, not in cheers, but in that exhausted, relieved exhale people make when the principal finally gets fired. Mrs. Alvarez actually hugged me. Mr. Henderson clapped me on the back so hard my teeth rattled. And Karen? She gathered her little leather portfolio with shaking hands, pearls clicking like countdown beads, and walked out without another word. The door didn't slam. It just clicked shut behind her like the universe finally closing a bad chapter. 2 weeks later the new board, me included, because apparently the quiet guy with the binder has a fan club now, voted to repeal half the ridiculous seasonal rules Karen had pushed through over the years. My pool cover stayed exactly where it was until I decided to open it again. No fines. No cops. Just peace. The kind of peace you only appreciate after you've watched a tyrant and Tory Burch get publicly dismantled by her own weaponized paperwork. I still sit on my porch some mornings, coffee in hand, watching the neighborhood wake up without that low-level fear humming in the background. Sometimes I see Karen's SUV drive past. New neighborhood, new victims, probably. But here the grass can be 2.6 inches tall and nobody dies. The kids still play basketball. And my pool cover? It's become a local legend. Kids point at it and whisper, that's the one that took down the HOA queen. So tell me, honestly, was I the villain for covering my own damn pool 3 weeks early? Or was Karen the real criminal for turning a homeowners association into her personal fiefdom? Who was truly wrong here? The guy who stayed silent and gathered proof, or the woman who called 911 over a tarp and lost her crown because of it? Drop your verdict in the comments. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of an HOA Karen special, hit that like button. Because the next time one of them comes for your pool, your gnome, or your piece, you'll know exactly what folder to start.